I chose her best friend's father, and the night it all began is etched into me like fire against skin. It was late July, the air thick with the scent of magnolia and ocean salt drifting in from the coast. I had just turned 35, still aching from the ashes of my crumbled marriage, when I moved into their guest house for the summer. From my window, I could see the golden light spill from the big bay windows of their main house, where my best friend Sophie laughed inside with her father, Daniel. He was tall, silver-haired, with eyes that held the kind of quiet strength that made you feel safe and seen. But he was Sophie's father, twice my age, and therefore someone I had never ever allowed myself to think about. Until living there made every shared glance, every worn smile impossible to ignore. I had always considered my life to be steady, even blessed in its own quiet way. My career in graphic design had flourished. Clients sought me out for my ability to weave emotion into color and form. I had a home, a husband, and a best friend who felt like the sister I never had. Sophie was my anchor through storms, and her father was a warm but distant figure in the background, until the day everything changed. The day my marriage shattered began with the sound of clinking glass. I walked into our kitchen to find my husband hunched over, telling me in a hollow voice that he was leaving, his eyes avoiding mine. The smell of burnt toast mixed with the cold scent of betrayal. The note he left was short. "I'm sorry, but I need something else." Something else, someone else. The words tasted metallic in my mouth as I read them. The weight of 12 years of marriage collapsing inside me. I did not cry right away. It took hours, just the steady hum of my own breathing, the echo of my footsteps pacing across the hardwood floor of what suddenly felt like the wrong life. That evening, Sophie arrived at my door with wine and soft concern in her voice. She suggested I take time away at her father's place, where the guest house stood tucked behind a garden of lavender and roses, so fragrant they made my chest ache. I agreed, desperate for escape, and that is how Daniel entered my days in ways that would undo me. The first week was a blur of quiet meals, the hum of cicadas, and footpaths lined with hydrangeas. Daniel was gracious, offering to carry my bags, fixing a stubborn window in the guest house, leaving a basket of fresh bread on the porch without a note. I could smell the yeast and warmth of it before sunrise. He made the silence feel companionable rather than lonely. Yet beneath it, danger stirred. One evening, a storm rolled in, thick clouds swallowing the stars, the sound of rain pattering against the roof in a rhythm like a heartbeat speeding up. My design work had kept me up late in the small study, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the garden now blurred by sheets of rain. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Daniel stood there with a flashlight in hand, his shirt damp from the downpour. "Power's out," he said, his voice low, almost intimate in the darkness. He came inside, smelling faintly of rain and cedar. As he checked the old fuse box, I found my eyes tracing the lines of his jaw, the slight curl of his lips as he concentrated. There was no reason for my pulse to race, but it did, harder, faster. He noticed my shiver and draped his jacket around my shoulders, his fingers grazing my arm for the briefest second. That accidental touch felt like both a promise and a warning. Over the next days, small moments accumulated. Him letting me taste a spoonful of soup he made, rich with thyme and something I could not name. The way his gaze lingered when I laughed. The late-night talks on the porch swing where we spoke of old losses, his wife's passing, my broken marriage. We did not name what vibrated in the space between us, but it was there, alive. If this confession has you holding your breath and leaning closer, hit like and share, because you will not believe what happened next. It was around midnight when I woke to the sound of music drifting in from the main house. Daniel was in the living room, a single lamp casting everything in honey light. He was listening to an old jazz record and sipping something deep amber from a glass. I stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment, watching the way the soft lines of age on his face seemed lit from within. He saw me then and smiled, gesturing for me to join him. I sat across from him, the velvet of the armchair warm from the lamp's glow. We talked about how music builds and bends like memory, how certain notes can bring back an entire life. He told me he admired my resilience, that he had watched me in Sophie's life for years and thought me more luminous than I realized. The words wrapped around me in a way that made me feel undone. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy with the smell of wet earth. Hours passed, and the distance between our chairs seemed smaller every time I leaned in to catch his words. He reached for my hand then, not in passion, but in an almost reverent way, as if to say, "I see you." My heart thundered against my ribs. Every rule, every reason why this should never happen, pressed against me like glass, and yet I did not pull away. Sophie's voice echoed in my mind, the memory of her father's kindness all through our friendship. But that night, Daniel was not just her father. He was a man who had watched me break, and instead of turning away, had chosen to stand close enough to hold the pieces as they fell. The next morning, sunlight spilled over everything. He was in the garden, trimming roses, the scent sweet enough to make the air feel like it belonged in some other gentler world. We did not speak of the hand-holding, but there was an unspoken thread between us, something that made my breath catch each time our eyes met. Days stretched into weeks. Sophie teased that I seemed happier. I told her it was the sea air, the garden, the peace. But the truth was, it was Daniel, the way he listened without rushing me, the way he never once tried to fix me, only to understand. One evening, as August tipped towards September, we sat on the porch again. He told me he feared hurting Sophie if anything between us went too far. He valued her trust, my friendship. I told him I understood, even as my chest tightened. What neither of us said was that in another life, without the tangled lines of loyalty and timing, we might have been something extraordinary. And maybe we still could be someday. As I packed my bags at summer's end, he walked me to my car. The garden was still heavy with the scent of roses, though some petals had begun to fall. He touched my cheek lightly, a farewell without a promise, but with the weight of possibilities we still dared to imagine. I drove away, knowing the lines between wrong and right had blurred, and that sometimes the heart answers to no rule but its own. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.